just like I said, tell us a bit about yourselves first, and just the general gist of the show.
Okay. I'm Daniel Thackeray. I'm a writer and an actor. I've been doing Fringe productions for a few years now, ever since. Used to work for the police as a typist, but then got laid off. So now I'm a writer and an actor when I can afford to. And this, my friend here, is...
Hello, I'm Howard Whittock. I'm an actor. Done a lot of stuff on the Fringe, Year of the Sex Olympics with him and Harvey, and used to do a bit of stand-up comedy, but nobody laughed, so I gave that up. Probably just as well. Well, some people, yeah. My mum did, but nobody else did. Now we're going to do a play called The Dead Live, which we've done already in Oldham, and we're going to be doing it again.
Yes.
What's it about?
It's a ghost story. We're both horror fans. In fact, we have a horror movie podcast.
Yes, we do.
Together, don't we? And
so what's that podcast? Sorry.
The podcast is called the Lee Cushing Podcast.
Right.
At noisybark.com, and we discuss old horror movies like a pair of middle-aged white guys, which is what we are.
Middle-aged.
I'm talking about me. But yeah, I love ghost stories, and there aren't very many ghost stories in the theatre. Like there's The Woman in Black, which is the very famous one.
I saw that one, yeah. I liked it.
It's great, isn't it?
I loved it. I did it for GCSE. I did an essay on it.
All right, okay.
It was a long time ago, but
I missed out doing that. Loads of people my age did that, but not me. I know that it's common at school, but it's a great show. It's a great book, and it's a great film. I'm a huge fan of The Woman in Black.
I was more scared at the film I was more scared at the show than I was at the film.
Oh yeah, well actually, when I say it was a great film, this is tangent. There was an older film made of it in the 80s for TV that is amazing. It's one of my favourite things, and actually it's something that I thought about quite a lot when writing this. When I say the film's great, I'm not talking about the one with Daniel Radcliffe. That's merely okay. But anyway, this is not an episode of our podcast. So I started writing... I've had the idea of doing a ghost story play for a long time. I started writing 10 years ago. I couldn't quite get it to work. But then I met Howard, and we worked together quite a lot. And he gave me, and I thought I can see him playing this character, and I can get it together. So, and at the same time, I was also encouraged by Oldham Libraries, because that's my hometown, and they put on plays and things there quite a lot now. And they said, if you write something, we'll put it on. So that's why I thought, right, I've got to finish this now and do it. So I wrote it, and I contacted Howard, and so we've workshopped it at Oldham in a kind of semi-complete form, and now we're doing it for the first time properly in the Fringe.
Cool. So could you tell us just a bit of an overview about the play itself? You say it's a ghost story. Obviously, you don't want to give away all the tricks and twists, but can you tell us a bit about the play?
With pleasure. Well, basically, it's Howard plays a psychic medium called Lawrence Dobbs, and the play is kind of based around, he's kind of a Derek Acora-like character, and in a way he's a little bit of a Mickey take of Derek Acora, Colin Fry, people like that, the late lamented Colin Fry, so in a way the play's a bit comedic, but as it goes on, and you actually get to, as the audience, go to one of his live shows, and see his shtick. But then creepy things start to happen, because there is, I suppose it's not too much of a spoiler, so there is some genuine supernatural...
Something unnatural.
That Lawrence is kind of interacting with.
Okay, so is the play itself framed like a live show, as in one of the medium's live shows? And you bring the audience into it like that?
Yeah, that is part of it. Yeah. So there is a certain amount of interaction between Lawrence and between the actual audience, which created some interesting effects.
Well, right from the beginning, it's obvious that Lawrence is a fake, because the first thing that happens is the actress. He's got several actors in the audience, and they're the ones he sort of reads the futures of, and and then it's all trickery and it's all fake. And the first part of the play is him explaining to this actress and to the audience as well how he does it, what he does, and all the tricks, and how he sort of like reads people and all that sort of thing, and what psychics do. And then we go to the live show of him performing, and then it all goes a bit
but
spooky.
We did have some moments where you kind of go into the audience and try and kind of cold read people, which got some interesting reactions. Some people, let's just say, I always like to have a bit of audience interaction, when I do a show. I've written shows before and directed shows, and this show is not directed by myself. We have a wonderful director called Alex Shepley. But I've talked to her about it, and we're both very keen on the idea of bringing the audience in and kind of bringing them directly into the world. But we're also aware that sometimes theatre audiences, that's not what they go to the theatre for, so they're slightly scared, slightly alarmed when you try and pull them into it. But I think for this kind of play, which is dealing with supernatural things and dealing with fear, I think that's quite appropriate. And you get kind of a lot of nervous laughter, which is...
helps.
Yeah, definitely. So
because they're already on edge anyway, so
so
that interaction is kind of just heightens it, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's kind of the aim. So and as a result, we hope that we're doing something that's kind of quite unique, really.
It sounds it. You said earlier on that there's quite a lack of ghost stories in the theatre, or maybe horror in the theatre in general. Why do you think that might be?
Partly, I think that there is a kind of snobbery about genre in the theatre. You don't get too much horror, fantasy, science fiction stuff in the theatre, although we've done loads of it. We've been kind of pushing that kind of stuff for years because we find that audiences really respond to being taken to a fantastical place, and that's what you can do in theatre, that even in a film, with amazing special effects and whatever, you're watching the film. It's there, whereas in the theatre, it's happening. You're kind of almost in it. The actor can be 2 feet from your face.
So saying that, why do you think that it's not as popular as it is in the films? Because to me, that sounds better being in like horror.
Yeah.
In it, but it's not as popular as it is in the films. Why do you think that?
Well, I think it is, but it's just not as well promoted within the genre. I mean, kind of the theatre industry is very heavily. It's about drama and it's about musicals, really. And I also think that when you have had a play that's done that's been very, very successful, like The Woman in Black, which has been running now constantly for 20 years or so, other people are scared to take it on because they think it won't be as good, and it often isn't as good. Other producers have recently started adapting other stories by Susan Hill, who wrote The Woman in Black. And obviously they're not as good. Not to knock Susan Hill's ability to write other stories, but she wrote a masterpiece, and everything else is going to seem a bit disappointing afterwards. But there are some that... But I do think there's a strong audience for it. I mean, at the Oldham Coliseum, they have something that might be described as like a ghost story play at least once a year, and it always does really well. Like Blythe Spirit, or an Inspector Calls, those kind of period mystery, ghost, supernatural mysteries, Gaslight, they do really well. So I think that there is a track record for a kind of a very traditional kind of ghost story. But it's difficult to get accepted unless you've got a name. Very recently, a friend of mine, Joe O'Byrne, wrote a period ghost story piece called The Haunting of Blaine Manor, which was on here at the King's Arms and the Hope Mill in Manchester, and it did really, really well, and it got great reviews, but it's not really been taken up elsewhere because people want to really recognise the name, and I think it's frustrating because that part of the genre, that kind of period ghost story, is proven, but that's why I didn't want to do it with this. I wanted to approach a ghost story in a completely different way that would bring the audience into it in a way that would surprise them.
What made you so fascinated with ghosts?
Well, I grew up in a haunted house, so yes, and some of it that has got into the play, and I find ghost stories frightening when they're good, but I don't. The other thing is, I say I grew up in a haunted house. That doesn't necessarily mean I believe in ghosts. I had some strange encounters when I was like 5 with things in the house, and other people in my family did as well. But I was 5 at the time, and I don't know whether I was imagining stuff. And as an adult, kind of rationally, I don't really believe in ghosts, but I do find ghost stuff very frightening in fiction, and I don't quite understand why I do. It's like, I know this isn't real, But
you
it's
just want to build on that fear, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to add to that, and I also think that I love ghost stories, and there are great ghost stories. There aren't that many really good ones, and I want to add. There's a lot of films and stuff with things that go, and that are supposed to scare you like that, but most of them are not very good. And I
suppose most horror films don't really deal with ghosts, do they? When you actually get down to the brass tacks, they're more monsters or killers or aliens, but they're not really too many that deal with a pure spirit, I suppose, in that regard.
Yeah, and they don't really look into it, and if they do, they use it as a kind of monster. It's just something that wants to kill you. Yeah. And obviously anything that would want to kill you is frightening. But that's where the excitement of the thrill comes from. But I enjoy a story where it makes you think, why is this thing frightening? Why am I scared? What's really going on here? Yeah. And
I think a lot of horror films these days are made for a very kind of small demographic. There's not many big budget horror films made in the same way there are big budget science fiction films or superhero films and things like that. Yeah. A lot of horror films are very low, but I watch some of the stuff on the Horror Channel, and it is. You don't know any of the people in it.
We love the Horror Channel.
We love the Horror Channel. It's marvellous. Yeah. But you don't really know any of the actors or anything like that. It's obviously made on a low budget, and because of that, then in order to make its money back, it has to appeal as much as it can to horror fans. So you have to have all the elements of horror films. So you have to have people being disemboweled and having their heads cut off and lots of blood and gore and things like that.
And I think a lot of producers, when they're trying to make money out of horror, they think that the fans... It's not the fans' fault.
No.
The producers think that the fans only want violence and gore and things like that. They don't want fascinating stories and great characters. So these low-budget films often just are...
Well, they just are special effects, just people being ripped to pieces, and that's kind of like once you've seen it once, once you've seen it 30 times, you've seen it,
Yeah.
It can be a bit monotonous.
Yeah.
So in a way, one person saw our show when we did the rough version of it and said it's supernatural and interesting, but it's in no way horror. And I like to think that it is horror. It is a ghost story, but it's not that kind of horror. It's not the kind of horror that people might imagine if they think they don't like horror. It's not. It's not the gore. It's not the slasher. But I do think that if you like the kind of subtle, strange ghost stories of people like M.R. James or The Woman in Black, things like that.
Suspense as well. That's sometimes more frightening than the actual outcome.
You want to scare people, not gross them out. That's all. You just want to scare people, unnerve them, unsettle them a bit.
And I'm very easily scared as well. If I went to this show, I think I'd probably just wee myself.
Oh, please come see it. Yeah.